I was midway through a flute of bubbly pink wine when it occurred. My cousin Mara rose in her strapless rehearsal gown, tapping her crystal like the lead in a romantic comedy. "Everyone, I'd like to acknowledge my most cherished cousin," she announced, grinning with saccharine sweetness. "This is Sariah, our eternal dreamer, the unattached one who's still clinging to yesterday." The declaration hit like an open-handed strike, wrapped in satin. The crowd tittered, several tilting forward eagerly like spectators at a scandalous reveal. Someone even arched their brows in that "here we go again" manner. I chuckled politely too, because that's the expected response when relatives turn your life into their dinner theater. Behind Mara, her fiancé Caleb flinched, just a fleeting twitch, but noticeable. He recognized the boundary she'd breached. My mother Jeanette shot me that trademark dual-purpose glance, half remorseful, half "I told you to bring an escort." Across the table, my sister Ivy found my hand beneath the linen, her marquise-cut band grazing my knuckles. I remained silent, maintaining my practiced smile while feeling like a specimen under laboratory lights. Then Caleb cleared his throat. All right, he mediated. "Let's keep the teasing gentle, folks. Now before dessert, my groomsman has some words to share." Chairs scraped, flatware chimed, the atmosphere pivoted. I glanced around, wondering who he meant, until I spotted him. Nicholas Violin, the best man, towering, reserved, impeccably put together in a midnight blue suit that seemed painted onto his frame. He emerged from the periphery, raising his tumbler as conversations dimmed instinctively, as though the universe knew this moment mattered. Then he spoke my name, clear, deliberate. Sariah. Every neck swiveled, every mouth slackened. In that suspended heartbeat, I couldn't predict whether his next words would wound or redeem. All I knew was the oxygen between us had transformed. He was gazing directly at me, not at the guests, not at the happy couple, at me. And suddenly, I wasn't just the girl perpetually stuck in reverse. I became something entirely new. I'd resisted attending this wedding, invented work deadlines for my mother, feigned illness to Ivy, convinced myself it would be too raw, too soon, too everything. But the RSVP had been mailed months prior, back when Ethan's toothbrush still shared my cup, before I discovered those damning texts, before 3 years of shared dreams dissolved into cardboard boxes and a paper sack abandoned on his doorstep. So I came, because etiquette demands it, because blood ties bind, because absence would spawn endless commentary. The venue was a Hudson Valley vineyard, straight from a studio backlot, twinkle lights draped between century oaks, vistas so flawless they seemed computer-generated. I drove up solo in my dented Honda, cycling through Ethan's old playlist before shutting it off abruptly when my molars ground together. By arrival, I'd recited my trifecta of survival mantras: smile, moderation, early exit. Inside the pre-wedding dinner, everything glowed amber. Candle flames quivered, smooth jazz undulated. The space thrummed with that particular energy born of free-flowing liquor and unworn heels. I recognized every face, yet felt strangely invisible. My mother located me instantly, air-kissing my cheek before fussing with my pendant unnecessarily. "You look presentable," she assessed. "But must you always dress like a funeral director? It's navy." "It's black." Then came Ivy, radiant in newlywed bliss, leaving perfect coral lip prints on my skin. "You actually came," she breathed. Obviously, her pitying smile treated me like fragile china. I didn't correct the assumption. Uncle Russ bellowed from the sweetheart table. "Sariah!" Still in that shoebox. "Apartment? Still reviewing books instead of authoring one?" The table roared. I shrugged, still turning semicolons into rent money. Mara materialized shortly after, already basking in bridal aura, wearing ivory despite protocol. Spotting me, her eyes sparked not with affection, but the thrill of the hunt. "My favorite cousin," she trilled, squeezing me too tightly. "Look at you, still solo, still stunning. We're definitely aiming the bouquet your way." I manufactured laughter. Our dynamic had always been this way, tense, unspoken rivalry masked as kinship. Behind her, Caleb offered a sympathetic half-smile. Decent guy. We'd once bonded over mutual disdain for wedding planning apps. "How are you really?" he murmured as Mara fluttered off. "Functional," I deflected. He didn't press. I valued that. The evening blurred into a montage of seating charts and cringe-worthy toasts. I'd been exiled to the singles ghetto beside some Grant who swore we'd met at a beach house circa 2014. Ivy periodically whispered, "We can ghost whenever." It was already surreal. Being among extended family felt like visiting a diorama of my former self. They treated me like that 25-year-old still head over heels, as though heartbreak had frozen me in amber. Their intentions were kind, but their compassion stuck to me like cheap fragrance, overwhelming and slightly off. Then, just as I calculated my escape route, Mara rose and shattered the evening like a dropped coupe glass. This is Sariah, our perennial romantic, the solo act who never quite got over it. Cue my performative chuckle, the crowd's tittering, Caleb's glance toward the rear as he announced, "Now my best man Nico has remarks." My pulse did something alarming then. Not a flutter, but a seismic jolt, the body's primal alert that reality is shifting. I turned and saw him, Nicholas Violin, and suddenly couldn't decide whether to bolt or stay rooted. 14 years. Not since that single electrifying night before college scattered us. Once, years back, I'd stumbled upon his name on a registry, clicked with trembling fingers, only to find no photos, no clues. Now, here he stood, approaching the makeshift podium with a stillness I distrusted. Time had sharpened his jaw, broadened his shoulders, darkened his hair. But those eyes, the way they found mine across the crowded room, remained unchanged. Nico was never part of the equation. Caleb hadn't mentioned him once in years of gatherings, not even in passing. I'd assumed they'd drifted apart, or perhaps Caleb assumed I'd decline the invite, rendering Nico's presence inconsequential. He took the mic, tapped it once. "Evening," he began, voice like aged whiskey, smoother, richer than I recalled. "I'll be brief. When Caleb requests a speech, you comply, even when it terrifies you." Polite laughter. I didn't join. My body recognized him before my mind could process. That old, cellular memory. Ivy gasped. "Wait, that Nico?" I micro-nodded. Her eyes ballooned. Damn. His toast was standard. College anecdotes, childhood memories, a tribute to enduring love. But when he said, "To love that persists," my mother's gaze burned into my profile. As applause faded, he looked directly at me, deliberate, testing. I glanced away first. Post-speeches, as guests swarmed the dessert buffet, I remained statue still, dissecting my uneaten cake slice. Then his voice behind me, "Hey." I pivoted. He stood nearer than anticipated, still holding his drink, still observing me like a recovered artifact. "Nico," I managed, hating how my voice fractured. A ghost smile. "You recall me. You literally just gave a toast." Still quick. I stood, brushing imaginary lint from my skirt. "Why are you here?" "Best man duties, planned for months. You didn't suspect?" "Not once." He exhaled. "Honestly, I didn't expect to speak to you either." The air between us crackled with unsaid history. He scanned the room. "You look well." "You forfeit the right to say that." "Fair." A beat. "You vanished." My turn to laugh bitterly. "You kissed me, then left for university and became a ghost." "True." Another pause. "I've owed you an explanation for 14 years. Your timing's impeccable." He chuckled ruefully. "Yeah, it's catastrophic." This Nico unsettled me. Measured, introspective, present. The boy I'd known was all impulse and adrenaline. The type who'd scale water towers barefoot to watch dawn break, who promised letters he never sent. He stepped closer. "I'm not here to complicate your life. But that toast? I meant it. Some connections linger, even when logic says they shouldn't." I looked toward the exit. "I'm not that girl anymore." "Good." His gaze held mine. "I'm counting on it." I excused myself abruptly, craving air. Outside, the vineyard stretched under a sapphire twilight, strung with glowing orbs like captive fireflies. The breeze carried notes of grapevine and wood smoke. For the first time all evening, my facade wavered. Inside, they were toasting love and fresh starts. I gripped the wrought iron railing, gulping shaky breaths. The past had just materialized in a tailored suit, speaking truths I never anticipated, and I was utterly unprepared. I lingered longer than intended, the night quiet save for muffled jazz standards. Common sense said, leave, skip the cake, dodge the slow dances, text Ivy a white lie, and vanish. Instead, I stood paralyzed by one terrifying question. What if I stopped running? Behind me, the French doors groaned. Ivy emerged, bearing 2 Pinot Noirs. "You're not weeping," she observed, passing me a glass. "Not yet." We sipped in silence. "You could hear him out," she ventured. "I did. Properly, I mean." I swirled my wine. "You recall how it ended." "I recall he was a terrified teenager. We all were." She studied me. "I also remember how you glowed around him, Sar, like you'd swallowed sunlight. That girl's gone. Ivy raised a brow. Is she? I didn't answer because I wasn't certain. She nudged my shoulder. You owe him nothing, but maybe you owe yourself some honesty. When she retreated inside, I remained, contemplating the person I'd been when Nico and I almost collided. That single seismic night that should have launched countless others. Instead, he vanished. I waited, then pretended indifference. Now here he stood, speaking words I never dreamed I'd hear. Abandoning my glass, I re-entered stealthily through a service door, spotting him by the stone fireplace, alone, staring into flames like they held answers. I approached. You mentioned explanations, I stated. He turned slowly. If you're willing to hear them, try me. We adjourned to a secluded bench beneath fairy lights, the party's hum fading behind us. Nico didn't rush. He sat like a man finally facing his reckoning. I left because it felt too profound, not too trivial, he confessed. That kiss? I knew instantly it was singular, and I panicked, thought if I stayed, I'd derail everything. I was a child, Sariah, terrified of anything real. You ghosted completely, I countered. That haunts me daily, he admitted. I drafted 100 texts, never sent one. I studied him. No charm offensive, no revisionist history, just raw accountability. I waited, I whispered. I know. He met my eyes. I don't merit forgiveness. Correct. The words hung between us. But perhaps you're not seeking absolution. I'm seeking truth. And if the universe is kind, a chance to rewrite our ending. Inside, Crystal pinged. Caleb reclaimed the mic. Before dancing commences, special thanks to everyone, especially my best man, who apparently had bonus commentary. The crowd tittered. Against tradition and spousal guidance, Nico's got addendum. My heart somersaulted. Nico turned to me. Objections? I gaped. You're joking. He stood, adjusting his cuffs with a helpless grin. No takebacks now. He strode inside. I trailed numbly. The room hushed as Nico took center stage. Reintroduction, he began. Most of you don't know me, but tonight isn't about Caleb. Murmurs. It's about someone I walked away from, thinking I was being wise. Instead, I sacrificed the most extraordinary person I'd ever known before we even began. Every face swiveled toward me. He continued, voice steady. They claim time heals. Sometimes it just hibernates. When you finally confront it, you realize it never stopped being significant. His gaze found mine. I'm done running. From love, from remorse, from those I've wounded. And if she's listening, I want her to know she altered me irrevocably. I'm here tonight for one reason, to ask for another chance. Even if all I earn is 5 more minutes, I'll take it. Silence. Utter stillness. Aunt Cecily's fork clattered. Ivy's jaw unhinged. Mara looked like she'd swallowed a wasp. And me? I stood paralyzed, emotions warring, fury, hope, fear, longing, all crashing like storm surges. Nico returned to me, the crowd parting like the Red Sea. Every word, he murmured. And for the first time in forever, I didn't feel like abandoned property. I felt like someone worth fighting for. We didn't kiss that night. No grand cinematic clinch. Reality isn't screenplay. We walked into the vineyard, beyond prying eyes, and I interrogated him mercilessly. Why radio silence? Why resurface now? How do I trust this isn't midlife nostalgia? He answered everything. The years adrift, the therapy, the accidental glimpse of my photo on Caleb's phone that reignited everything. He sought no pardon, just the chance to speak his truth. And in that space, something unlocked. Not instant healing, some scars are woven too deeply, but the realization I didn't have to nurse them alone. We talked until the band packed up, then he walked me to my car. No expectations, he vowed, but if you ever want to explore who we are now, not those kids, but the people we've become, I'm here. I nodded. We'll see. No dramatic promises, just possibility. 3 weeks later, a parcel arrived. No sender, just his handwriting. Inside, our high school favorite, The Little Prince. On the title page, he'd inscribed, "What matters most is unseen. Sometimes we need decades to comprehend what our youth couldn't articulate." N. I smiled properly for the first time in ages. We took it glacially. Coffee, then walks. No pressure. At Mara's actual wedding months later, no one called me the single one. I brought Nico, not as vengeance, just as someone who'd earned his place. Mom eventually murmured, "He's different." "We both are," I replied. Ivy just winked. This isn't some fairy tale where the maiden waits eternally for her prince. It's about pain, healing, and allowing the past to knock only after you've built stronger doors. Nico wasn't the closure I expected. He was the unexpected beginning I'd stopped believing I deserved. And as I sat at that reception, surrounded by laughter, his palm warm over mine, I understood. I hadn't failed to move on. I'd simply been waiting to move forward on my terms, in my time, when it felt authentic. Because love isn't always about perfect timing. Sometimes it's about bravery, and this time I had both.